Welcome, everyone, to this inaugural edition of our 2025 Summit Series. I'm so excited to be back, and I hope that your year is off to a great start. My name is Ryan Grundy, and I'm the lead of Ecosystem Management at Payments Canada. I'll be your host for today's webinar, which is our Innovation Spotlight. We'll commence proceedings today with a land acknowledgement, which serves as a crucial step in the journey towards truth and reconciliation by honoring the history, rights, and contributions of Indigenous peoples. I wish to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. Our Ottawa office is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. Our Toronto office is located on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. Ottawa and Toronto, among other cities from which we are joining today, are home to many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. I recognize and honor their historical presence on this land, which I am privileged to live and work. Before we kick off our conversation today, on behalf of myself and Payments Canada, I'd like to thank all of our attendees for taking the time to join us. We endeavor to reward your engagement with a lively and informative discussion. Between our topic and esteemed panel, we have all the ingredients to deliver. As is customary, for those of you who are seasoned veterans of the Summit Series circuit, we'll start off with a roundtable discussion, but we will save time at the end to answer your questions. So as the discussion takes place, please ensure that you use the Ask the Speaker box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will try to cover as many of them as we can. We do kick off every year with a webinar to provide insight and a preview in terms of what's in store for the upcoming year and beyond. Coming out of another exciting year of transformation across the payments ecosystem, I am excited, on behalf of Payments Canada, to have a great panel lined up for you today. Joining me are Sophia Cote, Head of Policy and Communications at Shakepay, Ben Isaacson, Senior Vice President, Product Strategy at the Clearinghouse, and Donna Kinoshita, Chief Payments Officer at Payments Canada. We'll start with some brief introductions, and then we'll dive into the questions. So, Donna, let's start with you.
Hey, thanks, Ryan, and good morning, everybody. I'm Donna Kinoshita. I'm the Chief Payments Officer at Payments Canada. I've been here almost 2 years now. I've got about 25 years of payments and technology experience. Many of you are familiar with Payments Canada already, but for those of you who are not, Payments Canada is a not-for-profit organization. We're guided by the public policy objectives, and we own and operate the clearing and settlement systems for Canada. For reference, we clear over $100 trillion a year. And we're in the final legs of the payments modernization journey in delivering the RTR and fraud, hopefully very soon. Over to you, Ryan.
Thank you, Donna. Ben, we'll pass it over to you for introductions.
Great, thank you, Ryan. My name is Ben Isaacson. I'm a Senior Vice President of Strategy and Innovation at the Clearinghouse. For those of you who aren't aware, the Clearinghouse is a market infrastructure in the U.S. owned by 22 of the largest banks there. We run wires, real-time payments, ACH, and check image processing, as well as drive a lot of kind of innovation and new things in the industry that really needs bank cooperation to make that happen, including things like open banking and others. So I lead the open banking area at the Clearinghouse, as well as a diverse portfolio of strategy and innovation. 25 years in banking and payments across banks, networks. I probably touched every area of payments along the way.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ben. And Sophia, we'll leave it to you to round out the introductions to ensure that we're all well acquainted before we get into the discussion. Over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ryan. And hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Sophia Cote, and I head up the policy and communications function at Shakepay. I have almost 15 years of experience in the public policy and government relations space, primarily working for nascent technologies. So before I was in the payments crypto space, I actually was also in the rideshare space. For those not familiar with Shakepay, Shakepay was founded in 2015. It's headquartered out of Montreal. That's where our co-founders met, and that's where they live and still work today. It started out just as an exchange first to buy and sell Bitcoin. but we are now also in the everyday payment space. So we also offer things like bill pay, direct deposit. We have a prepaid Visa card. We have e-transfer. And we have around 1.4 million customers across Canada. And we're on a mission to help Canadians build wealth by connecting Bitcoin to the traditional financial rails. So allowing customers to spend their dollars while earning and saving in Bitcoin. We've actually spent around $50 million in Bitcoin rewards to our customers since we were founded in 2015. So we're quite proud of that. We are regulated as a money service business with Fintech. We also recently became an investment dealer with Xero. And of course, we also have registered as a payment service provider under the RPAA. And on the policy front, we've been very involved, of course, in all discussions pertaining to digital assets and crypto, but also very much on the real-time rail side and open banking. Since, as I mentioned, we also do offer traditional payment products as well. So very excited to be here and to be part of this conversation.
Thank you, Sophia. Happy to have you. We'll kick into the conversation now. For those of us who are attuned to the payments ecosystem, to say that 2024 was another big year would be an understatement, specifically as it pertains to payment regulation. In Canada, there's progress being made on the consumer-driven banking framework, and the proposed changes to the Canadian Payments Act, the CP Act, receiving royal assent, means that Payments Canada is now on the path to expanded membership and participation in our national payment systems. In addition to this, the provisions pertaining to the Bank of Canada's powers in administering the Retail Payments Activities Act also came into effect. Across the border, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, finalized its Personal Financial Data Rights Rule, which is more commonly known as the Open Banking Rule, under Section 1033 of the Dodd-Frank Act. Many of these regulatory shifts aim to foster greater innovation and competition in the payment space. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to the panel, and Donna, we'll start with you. The question is, what do these changes mean for your organization, for the payments ecosystem, and perhaps more broadly to businesses and consumers?
Yeah, thanks for that, Ryan. And your introduction hit the nail on the head in terms of we're super excited on the CP Act amendment receiving royal assent last year. And we looking forward to it coming into force later this year. So what that means for us is that it allows us to expand our membership to credit unions and PSPs like Sophia's organization, Shakepay. And what the access to membership allows is access to some of our clearing and settlement services, and more importantly, is the real-time rail that will have open access if you're registered under the RPA, as you've alluded to. What we're hoping and we endeavor is with the opening of access to these PSPs and credit unions, is it'll give Canadians more choice. It'll give Canadians more options in terms of innovative solutions. And what we hope choice and innovation drives is it will enable greater productivity for Canadians. We hope that it'll create better customer experiences. And, from a bigger picture, we hope that it helps improve the overall Canadian GDP. So lots to look forward to.
Thank you, Donna. So, a lot of your response centered around, opening up, access to promote competition, to promote innovation. And so I can't think of a better segue to transition to Sophia for her to respond to the question around what the changes mean for your organization, to businesses, consumers, and of course, to the payments ecosystem. Over to you, Sophia.
Yeah, of course. Look, I think the really exciting thing with these regulatory shifts, I think they indicate that, fintech firms are no longer operating on the fringes of the financial system. Instead, we're slowly being integrated into the broader financial ecosystem under a more structured regulatory framework. And I think the companies, that adapt quickly, so the fintechs that leverage open banking, the new payment rails, compliance readiness, I think we're going to be well positioned to compete better, scale better, and innovate more in this evolving landscape. And I think innovation and competition is a great thing. And I think it's also going to incentivize, traditional financial institutions to also partner more with fintech and crypto companies as a way for them to offer more innovative solutions to their customers. So I think it's a win-win. And I think the changes to the Canadian Payments Act, as Donna mentioned, of course, it makes Payments Canada membership more inclusive. It means a company like Shakepay, we can access core payment systems like the real-time rail, maybe links down the line, and direct participation in these systems will help us reduce reliance on traditional banks. It will lower transaction costs for us as a business, improve payment efficiency. This is all great for our customers. We want to have a better experience for our customers. And to date, it's been, it hasn't been the greatest because there's been a lot of things that we haven't been able to access directly. So I think it's very exciting, and I know there's still a lot that needs to happen for open banking to come online and all of those things. But I saw that you guys launched the consultation for the bylaws today, so that's really exciting. But yeah, I think look, 10 years ago, or even not even 10 years ago, sorry, 2-3 years ago, Shakepay would have never thought that we could have direct access to these systems potentially. And now here we are today, and that's really an opportunity for us, and we're quite excited. So yeah.
Thanks, Sophie, and thank you also for the plug around the release of our consultation on CP Act. Appreciate that. I think we'll close out our responses to this particular question with an individual who represents an organization who has had some experience on the RTP implementation journey. So Ben, I'll pass it over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of the changes we've mentioned previously mean for your business, consumers, and for the payments ecosystem?
Sure. So thank you for that. So the clearinghouse, we launched RTP in 2017, and I think as folks who are familiar with payments would know, launching big new payment systems takes a long time. Not just the launch, but the growth and the ramp up. It's not right away. The market doesn't adapt instantly. And what we've learned along the way is, where we've seen kind of things grow and evolve, it starts with what we've seen is with key use cases where the recipient, whether it's a consumer or a business, really wants to get paid. It's very important to get their money instantly, and often they're willing to pay for it, right? And that really creates the economic model and the incentive for all players to make the changes and investments necessary to make real-time payments a reality for that. So some of the use cases we're focused in on, and we've seen a lot of traction in early days. So we've seen a lot of volume in kind of the payouts from digital wallets. So consumers have money in a digital wallet, whether it's a P2P payment wallet or a crypto wallet or anything along the way. If they want to move money from that wallet into their bank account, often they want to move that in real time because they have urgent need for that cash. So we've seen a lot of volume there, a lot of growth in earned wage access. So this is employees, either gig economy or hourly employees trying to get their money in real time. I think people could all recognize if you work a shift on Friday night and you want to have money for the weekend, you want your money in real time. So we see a lot of things like that. We also see on the merchant side, for small businesses especially, they live and breathe cash flow. So if their credit card account, their merchant acquiring account at the end of the day, if they have money, basically paid through that sitting in their merchant acquiring account, that transfer from that account to their kind of to their business banking account. We're starting to see a lot of that. That one took a little while to take off, but we're seeing tons of traction there. So really, that's been kind of that key early use case is the recipient wants to get paid instantly and is willing to pay for it. And then the other dynamic that I think is really interesting, and it's not a surprise, but early adopters adopt early, right? So new payment system, the parties that were really kind of jumped in the fastest were the companies that are built on kind of modern technology, haven't built out the legacy processes that companies that are older had to build because the legacy processes 30 years ago, those were the new things, right? and so once the market starts building those things, it's harder to justify a transition. It's harder to transition. So we've seen a lot of kind of the early adopters, the technology companies, the fintechs, really taking the lead in kind of the early adoption of real-time payments. And we expect the rest of the market, and we see it starting to catch up now. One quick plug for the clearinghouse. We just had our billionth transaction yesterday. So, really excited to see the continued volume, and we hope to see more. And we're excited to see what happens in Canada as you guys continue to launch real-time payments.
Thanks, Ben. So definitely appreciate your response there. As I listened to the responses from all three of you to the previous question, definitely a pervading theme around, consumer sort of driving innovation or consumer need being sort of the catalyst. And, Ben, your response was great in terms of sort of the pragmatic approach. You can try to crystal ball everything that will take place when you press, go on the system, but you never quite know, what will unfold. So obviously, you talked about some of the use cases that, were sort of driving growth. I'm wondering if you can just tell us a little bit, were these some of the things that you'd anticipated? Was there anything that really took you by surprise? And, if so, what steps has the clearinghouse taken in order to adapt, to pivot, to sort of accommodate and to leverage that sort of, the consumer catalyst to spur growth?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's fascinating. So, I was part of I actually ran real-time payments at a large bank in a prior life. So I was part of the actual adoption of this. And when you think about the amount of time spent on research and analysis and strategy development, really, trying to nail here are the use cases that the world is going to adopt. Um, and I'd say we probably got about 50% right. Um, and it's both humbling but a great learning experience. So some of the things that we thought were going to take off much faster that didn't. So B2B payments. Um, when you kind of look at the characteristics of real-time payments, not just the speed, but the data-rich capabilities around ISO 20022, the certainty of payments, all those things just felt custom made for B2B. We were really confident that B2B payments were just going to take off in real-time payments. And I think we learned a few things. We learned that B2B infrastructure wasn't quite ready. So I'm talking about back office, right? When you have back office environments that have been created to revolve around batch settlement, 1 day, 2 day kind of processes, changing that whole back office to accommodate for real-time payments is a monumental change that we did underestimate. So I think that's one that we continue to push on. So some of the things we do there, one of the things we've done is continue um, to to um, to grow the dollar limits of a transaction. So the clearinghouse, we recently moved the limit up to $10 million per transaction. So we started at $100,000. We definitely heard from businesses $100,000 is too small. So as we continue to grow that size, we start to see greater adoption there. But B2B is one that's going to take a little while. And I'd say I'd go back to my prior point. We definitely kind of overestimated the speed at which kind of large traditional companies can change their processes to accommodate real-time payments. And so those are things that are happening, but some of the large traditional companies we thought were going to be first weren't. And we continue to see their onboarding, but definitely a lot more to come there.
Thank you very much, Ben. Again, sort of a great example of the pragmatism that's required in order for things to sort of take root and grow from the foundation that's built. I'm going to be keeping sort of with the theme of alliteration with P's here. So, you're talking a lot about some of the progress, and that's a key theme of our conversation here today. But of course, when we're talking about payments, one thing that is crucial to ensure progress is prudence. And so, Donna, my question will go to you now in terms of, the efforts ongoing at Payments Canada. So, Canada is actually going to be the first country to launch real-time payments with built-in fraud capabilities. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And we are very proud and hopeful that we will be one of the first, if not the first, jurisdictions to launch the real-time payments with centralized fraud service. I will say, though, many thanks to organizations like Ben's who have been very open about sharing your learnings. And so one of our, key things that we did at the outstart was look to other jurisdictions and what transpired when they launched their real-time payments and what could we learn from it. And the number one common theme came was When they launched, there was net new fraud, and that it was significant in some regions. And so as we looked at a made in Canada approach, we thought, listen, we need to learn from these other jurisdictions. And so as a country, we agreed we would launch concurrently on release one and day one with a centralized fraud service. Some of that is grounded in key principles when you think about those faster, final, irrevocable payments, and you couple that with the well-anticipated expanded access. It makes you think very carefully about how we can continue to ensure safe, sound, resilient payments in light of these new rails, in light of expanded access. The other thing I'll say is we heard time and time again what Ben had articulated is it takes time to grow a new payment type. It takes time to get adoption. However, fortunately, Canada or unfortunately, Canada is always a little bit unique. And in this regard, we're fortunate enough to start off with day one, release one, 1.3 billion transactions will go through the system. So when you layer that on to a live real-time rail, you really have to think about what can we do to continue to build and create trust in a new payment rail, continue that trust that we have in the ecosystem of keeping Canadians payments safe, sound, and secure. And so with that on release one, day one, we'll be launching a centralized fraud service. It has 4 key components that are foundational. One will be a centralized risk list. Then there's centralized reporting, centralized fraud analytics engine, and confirmation of pay. And this is just a start. We consider them core foundational services that at least keeps that base level of protection available to all on the first launch. We'll continue to look to augment, to encourage uplifting those engines. So,
Thank you, Donna. We talked a little bit earlier about how it may be difficult to predict the future, but that's not going to stop me, Sophia, from asking you to try to do so in this next question. Sophia, how would you see the role of real-time payments reshaping the broader financial ecosystem? I know you touched upon it a bit in your introduction, but what innovative opportunities do you think fintech companies should prioritize to help drive value and adoption in that real-time payment space?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think as Donna and Ben summarized so well, real-time payments, I mean, they're going to fundamentally reshape the financial ecosystem in Canada. They're going to eliminate settlement delays. They're going to improve cash flow. They're going to increase financial inclusion. I mean, Ben alluded to how important this is going to be for small businesses, gig workers, and just consumers in general, because they're going to be able to instantly access their funds. And I think, we're having a conversation around affordability in our country, right? And I do think it's also going to force traditional banks to modernize their infrastructure and rethink their revenue models. So I think that's all going to be a good thing. I think for Shakepay, I think there's lots of opportunities that excite us potentially for our customers when, real-time payments, comes into play, cross-border real-time payments and, reducing reliance on outdated wire systems. There's going to be tremendous potential in real-time lending and credit where you can do like instant underwriting and dynamic repayment models can unlock new financial products. And I think we're thinking of even about going a step further, like how can our customers secure loans from Shakepay using their Bitcoin as collateral, kind of same day loans. So that's kind of what we're thinking about a little bit as well. And I mentioned this previously, but we're really trying to be this bridge between the traditional financial world and Bitcoin. And I think having real-time payments will enable instant conversions, between fiat currency and Bitcoin that will make our, platform and product even better for customers. And I think Donna mentioned this as well. Look, I think the shift will demand stronger fraud prevention and security measures as transaction speeds accelerate. I think that's going to be really important for fintechs to take very, very seriously if we want this to be successful and if we want our use cases to be successful. I think Shakepay is kind of in an interesting position because we do have quite a lot of experience already working with real-time payment rail, which is the blockchain. And so, we've had a lot of experience trying to figure out how do we mitigate fraud on the blockchain? What does that look like? using kind of like tools and products like Chainalysis and artificial intelligence to help us. But there's always work to improve. And I think it's going to be really important for us as a sector to come together and find solutions to keep customers safe and also educate them. This is going to be such a new thing for Canadians. And, I think the onus is also on fintechs to make sure that our customers understand what this new reality is and what it looks like. And yes, there's going to be great new products, but here's how we can keep your funds and your information safe and secure. So that's how we're kind of thinking about it right now. Lots of opportunities with interesting use cases and new products, but we also will have to really focus on, fraud prevention and security going forward. That's going to be, I think, very important.
Thanks, Sophia. I mean, definitely hard to keep up. There's always evolution, but it definitely feels as though these days evolution accelerates exponentially, and it's difficult, to keep up as mentioned. Now, I'm going to keep it with you, Sophia. I'm going to give a bit of a sneak peek as to what you'll be talking about at the 2025 summit. So you'll be speaking on the convergence of fintechs and digital assets and talking about how that convergence is transforming the financial landscape. So without sort of stealing too much of your thunder from May, wondering if you can give us a bit of a preview on how that innovation is taking shape and how collaboration and partnerships will underpin it.
Yeah, of course. I think it's going to be a really exciting panel. We have someone from a traditional financial institution joining us, someone very specialized in fintechs, and then someone from the business side who's actually built fintechs and crypto companies. So we're going to have a lot of good opinions and good points of views on the panel. I think the convergence of fintech and digital assets, it's so fascinating because it really is revolutionizing finance by making transactions faster, more accessible, and decentralized. And I think fintech has already disrupted traditional banking and it's done so on traditional rails. Digital assets take it further by, enabling things like programmable money, tokenized real world assets, borderless transactions. And so I think fintechs and crypto can really complement each other. And I think you're seeing that with a lot of partnerships. For example, like MasterCard's recent blockchain integration with Fireblocks, Stripe and Visa are getting into kind of the stablecoin era, like realm as well. You're seeing a lot of big banks, even in the United States, starting to get into Bitcoin and crypto, trying to think about how stable coins are going to revolutionize payments. So I think we're going to talk a lot about, those different products and those different partnerships. And we're also going to, of course, talk about what we're seeing in other jurisdictions when it comes to kind of like digital assets and what's going on. There's a lot of momentum happening in jurisdictions like the European Union, the UK, Australia, of course, in the United States right now, as well, a lot going on kind of with crypto. And so it'll be interesting to see what Canada decides to do with that and whether we decide to, catch up, decide to also have better regulatory clarity and what that will look like. So I think we'll spend some time talking about that as well. And of course, we will talk about, Bitcoin because it plays a foundational role in this transformation of kind of finance. It was kind of the original cryptocurrency. It's a store of value, but it's also a global settlement layer with innovations like the Lightning Network. And then, of course, we'll also be talking about stablecoins because that's really the critical bridge between fintech and digital assets. And I think a lot of fintechs, as I mentioned, are starting to kind of work with stablecoins as part of their payments platform. So I think it's going to be very exciting, and there's going to be lots to unpack, and we're looking forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you, Sophia. I'll be there for sure, and I hope many of the attendees here will be as well in person at the summit. As your response indicated, obviously, new payment products, new payment services have to be developed in an increasingly complex and rapidly changing environment. So it's a question now for Donna and Ben, and Donna, we'll start with you. As Sophia had indicated in response, the pace of change will likely warrant more partnerships in order to be able to adapt and to keep pace with the change. So how can we ensure that we're addressing current and future market needs through effective collaboration? Over to you, Donna.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll, preface it by saying before I joined Payments Canada, I worked for a couple of other organizations with the ecosystem, and I thought it was a pretty complex environment until I came to Payments Canada. And when you're looking at the big landscape and the whole ecosystem, it's about as complex as you get. So having said that, the only way you can move forward in this market is you have to be highly collaborative. As you know, we have coined a terminology as it relates to the RTR, but probably applies to everything, is Team Canada approach. And we started with this Team Canada approach as we were looking to partner with our vendors in bringing the RTR to market. And now with the fraud service, again, part of that Team Canada. But really, when you think about it from a broader perspective, Team Canada includes our regulators, our stakeholders, our new to be members, our current members, our shareholders, uh, and all Canadians. We have to take into account everybody's concerns, needs, interests. And I think we're lucky enough in a market like Canada. We're big, but we're not too big. In fact, compared to some other jurisdictions that have gone through this, we're relatively small. And so you can encourage that kind of collaboration. And it's a little counterintuitive, but this highly collaborative environment actually lets us move things along faster because we're getting alignment on that collective objective. I think everybody is focused on enabling innovation and creating more choice, whether you're a current member or a new member or a fintech, that we all just want to bring better, faster, quicker solutions to Canadians. And so that collaboration has worked well for us thus far, and we'll continue to look forward in terms of continuing to bring new things to market.
Thank you very much, Donna. Brilliant recap of sort of the Team Canada approach and the collaboration that we're seeing north of the 49th parallel. I think I'll transition to Ben, who can tell us a little bit about his experiences in the United States in terms of the partnership approach and how collaboration has acted to to drive forward payments modernization.
Sure. So I guess I'll start there really by focusing in on the fact that the rapid growth in technology in kind of software platforms has been an unbelievable catalyst for collaboration, where partnerships that used to take years to create, to structure, to implement can now be done in weeks. And what we're seeing is that the companies who are getting good at partnerships are best positioned to take advantage of this new reality. So some examples. One area that we're paying a lot of attention to at the clearinghouse and just in the industry is just kind of the rise of SaaS providers in the business payment space. And what's fascinating to me about that is, coming from a world where traditionally like payments were the realm of the bank, right? The banks made the payment. And that's just kind of how it works. Now you have these solutions that have created platforms where buyers and suppliers who are all in the same industry working together can basically run their like the 15 steps of their interactions in one integrated platform, and the 16th step is a payment. And so what you're finding is, from the payments perspective, it's all about how do we integrate the payments capabilities into that platform? Because if companies are getting used to kind of running their whole business out of these platforms, right? The whole interaction between buyers and suppliers, the contracting, the proof of goods being sold or sent, or the kind of all the things that companies do when they work together, if that's all getting run out of this platform, at the end of that, it's going to be harder and harder just to justify going to a different place for your payment. So we're thinking a lot about that, is how does that kind of model, this kind of software, the SaaS platform driven evolution, change the way we have to think about payments, enablement, integration, et cetera, continuing with a focus on safety and soundness, continuing with a focus on making sure payments can operate at scale. But you start to kind of see the impact of kind of that technology change and the new business models it can enable. And it's all about partnerships. It's all about making partnerships easier. And that's ultimately, to me, going to be successful because, everyone's smarter than anyone. And, there's no company that can create everything. So when you kind of look at the ease of partnerships and where, the kinds of environments that that's going to create, you really kind of start to have to calibrate your expectations around kind of where business and payments and the world is moving around how do we really understand the value, the unique value that that your company or your business creates, and how do you attach that into broader ecosystems or create broader ecosystems and find the partners who are going to do that with you to make these new realities happen.
Thank you very much, Ben. I love that phrase I don't know if you coined it, but you referenced it. Everyone's smarter than anyone. I don't know that I want that sort of intellectual democracy to take hold in my household, but certainly in the business world, it's definitely true. Um, Sophia, I'll just give you a chance. I know you sort of opened up the conversation, but anything you'd like to add in light of Donna and Ben's responses?
Their responses were so excellent, but yeah, I think, industry, it's kind of what we've all been talking about. I mean, it's rapidly evolving and no single player can keep up with the pace of change alone, right? And I think that's where like effective collaboration between, fintechs, banks, regulators, even government, like I think that's going to be, really key going forward. And I guess because we're a business and we're always thinking about the customer, I also think co-creating with customers during this time is also crucial. Like we need to understand the real pain points they have, whether it's in whatever product like cross-border payments or instant settlements, so that we can design products better and that are truly impactful and that are fixing their pain points. And I know that that's something at Shakepay, we always put the customer first and we really want to understand what they need. And of course we're also thinking like, what do they need that maybe they're not thinking about, right? Because we have sometimes they may not know what the future can hold, but at the same time we do need to co-create with our customers and make sure that their voices are at the center of this as well. And I do think we do a really good job in Canada. I have to, say this, like collaborating between industry players and regulators when it comes to kind of discussions around compliance, fraud, and security standards. I think we need to keep doing that. And I think especially right now as we're about to embark into a very new payments landscape, I think that's going to be more important than ever. So those are just the few things I wanted to add.
Great. Thank you very much, Sophia. So we've come to the act now portion of the agenda where we'll be opening up the floor to audience Q&A. So my understanding is we do have quite a few questions stacking up. If you haven't necessarily gotten yours one in as of yet, now is your opportunity to do so. And we'll give you a little bit of a buffer in order to do it because I'll sort of close out the formal question period with our panel with one open-ended question for everybody. But Ben, we will start with you. So pressure's on. Just want to ask you, Ben, what is the biggest opportunity that you see on the horizon in payments?
Sure. So I'll start by saying there's so much going on in payments. There's lots of opportunities, and I've been in payments for 25 years and never been more excited about that. Um, the one I love to talk about is earned wage access or instant wage access. And the reason why I like to talk about it is because it's one of the few things in payments. Everyone talks about, oh, we're going to change the world, we're going to make the world better. Instant wage access is something in payments where I think we can actually make the world better. And the reason I say that is, especially in the US, the stats show something like two-thirds of the population live paycheck to paycheck. So when you think about what that means people are getting paid every 2 weeks for work that they've already delivered. So they're basically giving their company, their employer, a 2 week loan. And what we find is two-thirds of the population can't really afford to do that. And when you think about the 2 week pay cycle, that's a very arbitrary item, right? 2 weeks, the 2 week pay cycle was developed 100 years ago in a world where everything was done with pencil and paper, and it was kind of as fast as you can move. And now we live in a world where everything's instant. Why shouldn't employees get paid when they work? And when you think about all the benefits that come with that, the food insecurity, the reliance on kind of expensive loans, things of that nature that can be mitigated if people just get paid when they work. And we're starting to see a lot of that in real-time payments. We're seeing kind of the fringes of it. A lot of specific companies being set up to really start to move this to the paradigm of the 2-week pay cycle. But I think there's more we can do, and I think that can be an absolutely transformative process in payments that can really help a lot of people who need it.
Thank you, Ben. Sophia, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if it's okay, I'm going to kind of divide this answer into like a payments response and also a business response. So I think in terms of like the business, I see just like so much opportunity for us as a business to provide better products to our consumers. So right now, so much work for us has to go into reconciling accounts. It takes days for funds to settle. Our customers sometimes have to send like 5 e-transfers over 5 days to get their amount of money, onto our platform so that they can, do whatever they need to do with it. And we also need to go to our competitors for enablement and access. And so much of our time for the last few years has been just time spent figuring out how to even access the system, how to participate in the system, how to exist, how to ensure we can still offer good products to our customers despite these constraints. And so I think we're at this critical juncture where, hopefully, like a lot of these constraints will slowly go away and we can actually innovate and focus on innovating and focus on doing, better products, more affordable products for our customers. And so I think for fintechs, this is such a huge opportunity because it's going to completely change the way we have been operating. As I mentioned, we were kind of on the fringes for so long. And I think finally we're going to be able to have, direct access into these systems. And I think just the opportunity is tremendous. I think in terms of like from a payments perspective, I think we can't underestimate stablecoins. I think stablecoins power cross-border payments to replace expensive and slow Swift transactions, inefficiency due to intermediaries, FX conversions, traditional cross-border payments can take 2 to 5 days. And with stablecoin, transactions can settle in a matter of seconds and costs can go from like 7 to 5% to less than 1%. And so I think a lot of, businesses who operate across borders are going to start using this. I think a lot of folks who need to send money home, this is going to be a really big trend. This is anecdotal, but, my husband and his family are from Venezuela and they have to rely on stable coins to get money in and out of the country. So I think it's going to be a very interesting trend to look at. As I mentioned earlier, Visa and MasterCard are already integrating stablecoin payments into their networks. So has Stripe. And Circle, which is the issuer of USDC, kind of the largest fiat-backed stablecoin, is already partnering with global remittances providers. So it's going to be a really interesting trend to look out for. As I mentioned, too, a lot of jurisdictions like Australia, the UK, EU, now the US are starting to put together kind of regimes to regulate stablecoins as a payments mechanism. So yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting trend to look out for.
Thank you very much, Sophia. And Donna, we'll pass it to you to close out the question around what you think is the biggest opportunity on the horizon in payments.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the Sophia tactic a little bit and divide it up in terms of business and payments. I think top of mind for me is as Canadians, and when you reflect on current events, probably the biggest opportunity is to leverage the capabilities that can improve Canadian productivity and competitiveness globally. And so when you take it down to micro level and apply it to payments, it is leveraging things like the real-time payment rail. It is all of the things that Ben talked about in terms of use cases. It is about collaborating and educating the market in terms of how they can adopt those use cases and collaborating with the regulators to help that adoption and pave the way for, I totally agree with Ben's comments on earned wage access. It's top of mind for me as you go down in terms of specific use cases we can look at in the Canadian market. Unfortunately, emergency relief funds have become very prevalent in almost every jurisdiction. And you think about how an RTR can help enable those better, faster, cheaper. And then I think a real opportunity for us is, look, the Receiver General as part of our Canadian government, is one of the largest issuers of Canadian payments to Canadian consumers and businesses. If they were to adopt the RTR, think how much better Canadians' lives could be in terms of final, fast, and irrevocable payments. I
Perfect.
could go on all the use cases, but I'll end there.
Well, you might get the chance when responding to the audience questions, so keep that fire warm. But speaking of keeping warm, since you've got the mic, first question actually, Donna, is for you. And the question is, how can a payment processor plug into the RTR?
Most excellent. Great question. First step would be to register under the RPAA as a registered PSP. And then secondly, become a Payments Canada member. And then determine whether you'd like to be a direct participant or an indirect participant. Direct participant requires a Bank of Canada settlement account, so a little bit more lift, if you will. But you can always look to work with a direct participant and become an indirect and participate on the RTR.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And again, just another plug for our public consultation around CP Act, which does obviously have some material impact to becoming a member, well, the material impact to becoming a member of Payments Canada. Next question is for everybody. And I think just to allow for preparation, Ben, we'll start with you. So with the collaborative nature within this space that has been sort of a topic of discussion today, where would you see marketing teams, communication strategies, and consumer insights playing a role within those developments?
Sure. That's a great question. So I think over the last 7 years that we've had real-time payments, I think I'll start with marketing, right? So the role of kind of marketing has been absolutely invaluable, and if anything, we've underinvested. And the reason I say that is because we are asking the entire ecosystem to adopt to something that's brand new. Um, so perfect example, we talk about real-time payments, everyone thinks, oh, the top benefit is speed. But if you ask a business, that's not true. The top benefit is actually certainty that the payment went through. So having marketing really understand the benefits to end users and be able to articulate them in a clear way is absolutely invaluable when you're launching something new. And this stuff is new and it's complicated, and payments in general, without real-time payments, they still work pretty well, right? So you really need to help people understand what the value is of migrating. So that's number one. And then when I go to kind of consumer insights, I think we've kind of seen, how important it is to really understand the consumer problems you're solving, how the consumers live their lives today, and how it could be different. And that really only comes from deep research and insight. I remember, and I'll go back to earned wage access for a second. I remember one of the most eye-opening pieces of research I've ever been a part of in that space was, our hypothesis going in was that, people who, weren't making a lot of money were just kind of bad at managing their money. And it didn't matter if they got their money same day, next day, in 2 weeks. In fact, 2 weeks was better because you're helping them save when they're not, where they're not kind of inclined to save. So you're kind of saving them from themselves, right? And we did this consumer research, and what we realized was people who don't have a lot of money are actually the absolute best at managing their money because they have to, right? Because it's life or death. The stakes are so much higher for them. And so for them, it's really all about the choices of, hey, am I going to pay this bill today or tomorrow? And if I pay this bill, I won't have money for this bill, or I won't have money for this expense that's coming. So they're on top of their money in ways that we never understood. And that all came from deep consumer research that in hindsight sounds logical, but it just wasn't where our heads were. So I think, again, as we're trying to change people's understanding, trying to change adoption, or kind of migrating into new payments types, marketing and consumer insights are critical.
Thank you, Ben. Sophia, how about wondering if you can sort of weigh in on the importance of marketing teams, communication strategies, and consumer insights assisting with developments in the payment space?
Yeah, I mean, Ben's answer was so fantastic. I'm not sure how much more I have really to add, but look, like, I think the financial payments landscape is very complicated. And I think the average Canadian does not fully understand what all of these things mean. What is open banking? Like, I think Canadians hear the word open banking and they are like, whoa, what is this? What does this mean? All of my data is just going to be floating around in like the open air? Like that scares me. Same thing with like real time rail. Like Canadians have just been so used to, using Interac and all of those things. Like, why does this matter? Why is this important? And I think, I think Payments Canada, you guys do such a great job with trying to educate. I know the FCAC does, but I think industry has to also play a huge role here. We're the ones that are engaging with our customers every single day. I know Shakepay, we have a very engaged customer base. And so it's important for us to also be educating them on what all of these trends mean. Why is it beneficial for them? What are we doing again from like a fraud and security perspective to like make them feel safe? But yeah, I think this is a complicated space. I always use this example. Like when I was working, in the rideshare space, it was very easy to explain to Canadians, oh, don't you want another option when you're out late at night to get home? Like they understand those things, but trying to have conversations with Canadians about, oh, don't you want to have like, faster payments or don't you want your data to like be like easily transferred from one bank to another or from one fintech to another? Like these things are more complex and more complicated. And so I think, yeah, our marketing teams, our social media teams have to do a lot of work to do that education. And from like a consumer insights perspective, I think this goes back to kind of like what I mentioned about co-creating with customers. How do you like the new Shakepay? What are your thoughts about, the faster settlement times or, what are your thoughts about these new products and like really understanding their perspectives and, trying to walk them through these changes. I think it's going to be really important because this is such a huge change from the status quo we've had for decades. So, yeah, I think marketing and consumer education is going to be more important than ever.
Excellent point, consumer education. I like you brought up open banking as an example. I know in Canada it's gone through a few iterations, consumer directed, consumer driven finance, sort of back to open banking. There's definitely an opportunity, I think, for people to have a better understanding. Um, Donna, I'll pass it to you to close out this particular response to the question around consumer insights, marketing teams, and communication strategies playing a role with payments modernization.
Yeah, listen, I agree with both Sophia and Ben. Great answers. I would only add that collaboration on educating the average Canadian is so important. It's just in terms of, being able to amplify the voice and that education level. I'm going to put it in the context, though, of fraud and anti-scams. And payments are one thing that's difficult to educate on, but you move it into a world of what's the next new fraud, what's the next new scam. Try to convince that person that's actually really not your new boyfriend at the other end of the screen or whatever. And it really does need that amplification, and you're only going to get that by collaborating with all of our different communications and marketing teams. With regards to research and insights, I would only add, segmentation is going to play a very key role. It's not a one size that fits all. Ben hit the nail on the head by giving really great examples of, you can't assume one thing. You dig a little bit deeper, you peel back the onion, and you find actually something completely else. So that deep consumer research or deep research, you test your hypotheses, and sometimes you find out your hypotheses aren't exactly right, and it allows you to pivot and go to market in a little bit different way. So I agree with all of their comments.
Excellent. And perhaps a lightning round question now, because we are sort of coming to the top of the hour. Something that we maybe haven't touched upon too much thus far is the cross-border payments. So similar to instant wage access, Currently a business owner may face a delay in receiving cross-border payments for a services provider. So we'll start with you, Ben, and then we'll go to Donna. Is there any work in progress to make cross-border payments a near real-time experience?
I think always, right? So the problem that you just identified, that's been a problem since my first day in payments, right? It's really challenging. I think there's two pieces around this, which is that the payment part of it actually is not the hard part. Moving the money, it's digital, right? It's not, that's not the issue. The issue is really the rules, regulations, legal compliance obligations around the payments. Um, we want payments to be fast. We also don't want terrorist financing, right? Um, and and that's just been the rub. Cross-border is even more complicated because you're looking at multiple jurisdictions. Every country has different rules. Um, when I'm looking at the question, especially around business owners, some jurisdictions require that B2B payments have invoices attached to them. So kind of the kind of navigating the myriad of kind of like the regulatory legal compliance landscape around cross-border payments, especially for businesses, is incredibly challenging. And again, the payments part is not the hard part. It's all the other stuff around it that really gets in the way. Um, and again, when we think about what's new, I'm very interested in the stablecoin aspect of it, as a kind of a call it a substitute for the correspondent banking system. I'm very interested to see how the legal regulatory compliance side kind of gets applied to stablecoin as it kind of continues to scale. Because again, that's where I see the hard part.
Thanks, Ben. And Donna, this will likely be the final word. Mind you, I'll say my goodbyes, but wondering if you can tell us a little bit about some of the work being done to facilitate cross-border payments in the future.
Yeah, so listen, it's not a question of if, it is as Ben says, when, and I completely agree. The technology isn't the hard part. It really is figuring out that regulatory framework. It's finding that balance between speed to market versus thoughtful, safe. We don't want to be inadvertently funding the wrong things in a faster final world. Um, I will say some of the things we think about today at Payments Canada now is, we've participated in a number of ventures that investigate hub and spoke type solutions. Um, I think from a long-term perspective, there's great success stories happening in Asia and Southeast Asia in that regard. But when you look at the practicality, you have to ask yourself, might it make more sense to walk before we run, to maybe try a single corridor? So these are the things that we think about in terms of how to approach cross-border in the future.
Thank you so much, Donna. Sincere apologies to those in the audience who may not have had their questions addressed candidly from a moderation perspective. It's a great problem to have, but do appreciate you may have wanted to see your responses made in real time. One remedy I can suggest is to actually attend the summit with us, and that'll give you obviously ample opportunity to have your questions answered, as well as mix and mingle with a lot of the luminaries within the Canadian payment space and beyond. So once again, just on behalf of myself, Payments Canada, first of all, thank you so much to our panelists for sharing their expertise with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation. And as I'd mentioned earlier, we're looking forward to continuing the discussion on the future of payments at the 2025 summit, where the theme will be innovate, collaborate, and transform. It'll be taking place May 6th to 8th at the Beanfield Center in Toronto. And for those of you who may not be able to make it to Toronto, our digital experience ticket has just launched, which includes a live stream of our main stage, access to the community, and 6 curated breakout panels. And again, if you can join us in person, which would be fantastic, we're happy to provide all participants today with a promo code to save on your registration. So once again, thank you to everyone in attendance who has participated on the panel today for your time and for your interest. And I wish you all a great rest of the day. Take care.